Okay, so we're going to be using the grid method to draw portraits. So the grid method is just you have a grid of lines on top of whatever photo you're copying, and you draw the same grid of lines on the paper where your drawing is, and this just helps you place things more accurately and have the proportions be correct so that it looks more realistic. Alright, so to find the picture we're going to use for our portrait, I'm going to go to Google Images, and I'm going to type in whatever person I want to draw a portrait of. And the first thing I'm going to do that's really important, because we want to use a large high quality image, I'm going to go to Tools, I'm going to click Tools over here, and I'm going to click Size, and then I'm going to click Large, so that it only shows me large high resolution images. So for a portrait, you're going to want a picture that's pretty close up, mostly focusing on the face. So something like this wouldn't work very well because it's too far away. You want something to mostly focus on the face. Having a little bit of the neck and shoulders in there is okay, but ideally you want it to mostly focus on the face. You don't want it to be super far away like this with a whole bunch of stuff in the background. You don't want a whole bunch of extra stuff in the background. You mostly just want to focus on that person's face, maybe a little bit of their neck and shoulders. So actually something like this would be totally perfect. So I'm going to use this one. So I'll just right click and then I'll do save image as, and I'll save it to my computer. I already saved this one, so I don't have to do that. So once you've saved your picture, the website we're going to be using to make the grid on top of the photo is this Proportion Grid Creator by Gagnon Studio. It's just timgagnon.com/grid. So I'm going to go ahead and click Start. So first thing it's going to ask you is the orientation. So that depends on what type of image you're using. For something where the top and bottom are longer than the sides, that would be landscape. So a picture like this or a picture like this would be landscape, something where the top and the bottom are longer than the sides. So all these pictures would be landscape. The other option, so one option is landscape. The other option is portrait. Portrait would be any picture where the sides of the picture are longer than the top and the bottom. So this one would be portrait, this one would be portrait, this one would be portrait. So it all depends on whatever image you chose. Just depends on the orientation of the image you chose. For mine, it's going to be portrait, and for canvas size, we're all going to set it to 8 by 10. It needs to be set 8 by 10. Alright, so then I'm going to click next step, then I'm going to choose my photo right here, upload, then next step. Alright, and I don't need to rotate this one. If yours is sideways, you might need to rotate it, otherwise go to the next step. So next one is crop. So this is really important because right now your picture is whatever size it was when you downloaded it, but we need to crop it so that it's that 8 by 10 size that we need. So you're going to click and you're going to drag, and then this square that you make, you can drag it around. You can drag the corners to make it bigger, but you don't want to like drag the side or the top to change the orientation of the rectangle, because this rectangle right now is exactly the proportions we want. So you can drag the corner to make it bigger or smaller, but don't mess with anything else because you want the proportions of this rectangle to stay how they are. But then you can move it around so that it's centered on the part you want to focus on. Then it's really important that you actually click crop photo for the next step. Alright, so now it's cropped. And next step. Alright, so line spacing, you're going to want it set to 1 inch apart. Line thickness, so I tried it with thin and I tried it with thick. The thin was barely visible, the thick was way too thick, so I would say do it at about a 3. Line color, black is the easiest, but you know, you do you. And then I'm going to click download. Alright, and then once it's downloaded, there I have my picture and it has my grid of lines on top. And then we're going to be recreating the same exact grid on an 8 by 10 sheet of paper, and that's what we're going to be drawing on. Okay, so there's two sizes of paper you already probably have at home. One would be 9 by 12, which if you have a sketchbook like this, most of the sheets would be 9 by 12. The other size, that's the most common size, is 8.5 by 11. That's what we call letter size. I'm going to be using that because that's what we mostly have. That's just like a regular piece of printer paper, or a notebook paper would be 8.5 by 11. So we need to make the short side of the paper 8 inches. So on the short side, I'm going to make a pencil mark at 8 inches in from the side. And then I'm going to draw a line going down, making sure the edge of my ruler is parallel to the edge of my paper. Then I need to make the long side of the paper set to 10 inches. So I'm going to make a mark at 10 inches on the long side and then draw a line. So I'm drawing these lines to know where to cut because I'm going to be cutting down my paper to size. So that is 8 by 10. So I'm going to cut along these lines so that now this sheet of 8.5 inch by 11 inch paper will now be 8 inches by 10 inches, which is what we need for our drawing. So now to draw the lines of the grid, it's going to be a 1 inch by 1 inch grid. So that means there's going to be a line at every inch. So I'm going to line up my ruler along the edge and just make a little mark at every inch along the ruler. So I'm going to do it on the short side first, and then I'm going to use those marks to draw lines. And every time I draw a line, I want to make sure the edge of my ruler is parallel to the edge of my paper. I want to make sure that the lines are not crooked. Alright, now I have to draw more grid lines going the other direction. So along the long side, I'm still going to make a mark with my pencil at every inch. And then I'm going to use those marks to draw the lines going the other direction. And again, you want to make sure that the edge of your ruler is parallel to the edge of your paper. You do not want the lines to be crooked. Alright, so I have my grid now, once I draw this line. So this next part is optional. It just helps a lot of people with keeping track of where they are on their grid. On the short side, you can number the boxes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then going down, you can write letters A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. And so that just helps you figure out where you are, like, oh, I'm in column 3, row D or something, and that just helps you keep track of where you are in the picture so you don't get lost. And then the grid you just drew should match the picture that's on your photo.